Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to the second season of Infertile AF, the podcast. It is 2020. It's going to be an awesome year. We have so much cool stuff in store for you guys this season. So we're going to get right to it with episode 42. This is called Keeley. Okay, so let me tell you guys a little bit about Keeley. She is a producer who lives in London, and she's going to tell us the story today about how she went through 8 different rounds of IVF, not only in London, but she also traveled to Spain and Russia. So we're going to hear what happened with her story and where she is now. I also want to thank our mutual friend, Gail, who you guys have heard me talk about several times on this podcast, because Gail is the ultimate connector. She's got this amazing network of fierce women friends who are all doing really cool things, and she is the one who told me about Keeley. So thank you, Gail. Love you, girl. And without further ado, this is Keeley's infertility story. Hi, Keeley. How are you today?
I'm really good, Allie. How are you?
I'm so good, and I'm so excited to talk to you. We've been trying to line this up for a little while. Are you in London?
I am in London, yes,
Okay.
London town. Yeah, I've lived in London pretty much all my life. So yeah, I live in London with my husband. All my family are from London, and I'm actually a producer. So I produce commercials and photography, but I don't do that at the moment because I gave up my job.
Okay.
10 years ago.
All right. Very cool. So I do want to say that we have a mutual friend, our friend Gail. I texted Gail last night and I said, I'm interviewing Keeley tomorrow. And she's like, how do you know her? And I said, through you. And she was like, oh.
I don't even know my own power.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I know that you have had, a long and arduous battle with unexplained infertility, right?
Yeah.
So can you start us at the beginning? Tell me when you started to try and when you knew that there was a problem.
Sure.
With stuff.
So I got married at the ripe old age of 35. My husband and I got together about 8 years ago. So when I was like 33, we've known each other for forever, but we didn't actually get together until like 20 years after. We both went to the same school, basically, which is very odd. But
yeah, same with my husband and I. So were you guys friends, but not like dating?
So he's like a tiny bit younger than me.
Okay.
So at school, I was like not that interested. And his kind of best friend is the younger brother of one of my best friends from school. So it was all, kind of a bit incestuous, but like we just hung out and just friends and kind of kept in touch vaguely over the years, bumping each other in the pub or whatever. And then I was very single in my early 30s, and some friends, our 2 friends basically said, are you single? We think you should go out with John. And I was like, had a quick stalk on Facebook and was like, yeah, he's turned out well.
Thank God for social media. You can
thank God for social media. Exactly.
Do a quick deep dive.
Exactly. And we went out on a date, and then I didn't officially move in until about 6 months later, but I pretty much moved in. And then we got married when 2 years later, and we kind of started trying pretty much straight away, but like not trying as in like pissing on a stick kind of trying, just having a lot of sex as you do.
Pissing on a stick. I love it.
Pissing on a stick. Sorry, that's a very English. Sorry.
No, I love it.
Or whatever.
I love it.
We were just having a lot of sex, hoping that it was going to work out.
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, of course, we've got loads of time. We'll just enjoy being married and all of the usual cliches that kind of happen.
Had you guys talked about like, we want to have X amount of kids, or like, had you had those discussions?
Yeah, we had those on our first date.
You did?
Yeah. We were like, do you want to have kids? Yeah. Do you want to have kids? Yeah. I was like, ideally 2, but whatever happens.
Yeah.
I think I was always quite conscious that I was already in my mid-30s when I was starting to try to have kids. So although it didn't play on my mind initially, I guess it was always slightly there, just to be like, we've got to kind of crack on with this because you never know, even though you never think it's going to happen to you. And I'd spent years comforting friends going, you'll be fine, don't worry about it. Like, it'll happen. And yeah, I don't even know if I can have kids, the irony of ironies now. But so yeah, we started trying. And then after about 6 months, 6 to 9 months, I was kind of like, I think we should go to the doctor. I think just because I was a bit I was probably more aware of what was going on. And I have like regular periods. I've never had any issues.
So nothing was happening. You weren't like having miscarriages. You just weren't getting pregnant.
No,
right?
Just wasn't getting pregnant.
Okay.
So we went to the GP and they basically said to us straight away, you've got unexplained infertility and we would recommend you go straight to IVF.
Wow.
Which was kind of, it wasn't not what I was expecting, but, loads of friends were like, oh, they'll put you on Clomid. I was like, okay, for one, that doesn't apply to everybody. And, when people come up with all these solutions that they think is going to work.
Right. Was that like a mind-blowing diagnosis though? I mean, that's pretty, how did they know like for sure right away? What did they do?
I mean, they didn't. It was like the local GP and, our health service here is totally incredible, but at a local level, it's like any sort of general practitioner. They're not experts in fertility. They don't, exactly know what's going on, but we had all the basic blood tests and, there didn't seem to be, and John's sperm was fine. And my AMH wasn't particularly high. Well, it was quite low, but there was no reason why. It didn't mean I couldn't get pregnant. So we started to try and go into our NHS in terms of our kind of state health service here, because we qualified for 3 rounds of treatment, which is totally amazing because I don't know if some of your listeners might not know, and I know it's totally different in the States, and I appreciate how lucky people are here. But even here, it's like a lottery depending on where you live.
Okay.
So like some places in London, you might get 1 round, some you'll get 3, some you won't get any at all. And that varies up and down the country as well. So we were super lucky.
Wow.
But when we got the kind of referral to go to see a fertility specialist, the appointment was for, I think we saw the GP in like the end of the summer that year. And our appointment was for the June of the following year. So it was like a 7-month wait. Okay.
That's kind of excruciating.
Just for the first appointment. So yeah, we waited about 7 months for the first appointment. And then actually at this point, I'm 36 and I'm like, I don't think we can wait 7 months. Honestly, I think we just need to crack on. So we kept that appointment in the diary. And actually we just decided, because we were very fortunate that we would go privately and we would do a couple of rounds or however many rounds we could get in before that appointment and see where we were at. Okay. And hopefully we didn't even need it, Right. So we went to a clinic, which is a kind of local clinic to where we live, but is twinned with a clinic in the centre of London. And we started treatment. And I mean, to be honest, when I look back at it now, I just think I didn't really know that we knew what we were doing at all.
Did you go straight into IVF?
Straight into IVF. Okay. And we just sort of rolled with it. It was like, take these drugs, have the scan. I was like, okay, cool. Thinking, well, that's all right because it's going to work, isn't it?
Right. Did you have friends who had done it and had been successful?
No. Like I'd had friends who had struggled a bit, but never had to go to IVF. I mean, I knew of people that had IVF, but no one in my direct circle. So none of my close girlfriends. I mean, literally all my friends have like hundreds of kids. Like it's ridiculous. They're the most fertile people in the world. So yeah, and I think I was quite practical. I'm quite a practical person. I kind of just like, right, if that's the solution, let's get on with it and do it. And so we kind of got on the roller coaster. And I mean, God, it's a long story, but we basically ended up having 6 fresh rounds of IVF, 2 PGS testing rounds of IVF, and then we've just had another round of IVF.
Okay. Can we go into the details a little bit with those? So tell me about, kind of one by one.
The first 2 rounds were at this one clinic, and it was all quite sort of what I would call standard IVF. It was kind of, the drug was very, very, very standard. I was scanned sort of every 4 days maybe. And we collected, God, I can't even remember the numbers now. I've never produced loads of eggs.
Okay.
And my egg count has never been very high. I think the most I've ever collected at a collection or a pickup, as you guys say, is like 8.
Okay.
So fairly low-ish in terms of numbers.
Right. But I've been learning just through talking to different doctors and different people that sometimes it doesn't matter how many.
Totally.
It's the quality, not the quantity. So
Absolutely.
I had a ton, but half of them dropped off like the very next day.
Which was also the kind of irony and frustration of where we've been all along, is that even though I didn't collect very many, they always fertilized, like literally all of them always fertilized. And we had very few drop-offs. Like however many we collected, probably 2/3 always survived. Okay. So it was kind of mind-boggling in terms of the numbers were low, but that the odds were for us in a way.
Right. And how were you doing with all of the drugs and stuff, like leading up to the retrievals or the collections?
Yeah,
as you said, the collection sounds a lot better. It's like more classic.
We call it egg collection. I mean, that's what it says on the tin. But I was speaking to someone who's Italian, actually, at the weekend, and she was calling it pickup. And I was like, it's just...
It's so cool how there's different terms in different countries.
Yeah, really
I should do like a list of them all. That's kind of interesting.
So, I mean, the drugs, I think, to be honest, that's part of the reason why we did so many bloody rounds, is they don't, I mean, you might have to ask my husband his opinion on this, but they never really affected me in a really negative way. Like I don't know why, but I never got super hormonal. Like I bloated, but it wasn't excessive. They didn't make me uncomfortable. I don't really have an issue with needles. You know, I'll just stab away and forget about it. And I think as a consequence, I didn't become numb to the process, but just, it didn't bother me. It was just kind of, all right, I'll just get on with it. It's just what it is. I just didn't have any adverse reactions. It didn't make me feel terrible on any of my rounds, actually. So yeah, those first 2 rounds we collected, and we had, on those 2 rounds, I think it was a day 3 transfer. For some reason, that clinic didn't take them to blastocyst. A lot of clinics here don't. I don't know whether it's like in the US, but when you have low numbers of eggs, they're really keen to get them back in you rather than take them to blastocyst and risk losing them.
Yeah, I think everybody's different. It just kind of depends on the clinic and what their philosophies are.
Exactly. So this clinic was, the best environments in you, so we're going to transfer them back in you. So the first transfer was fine, but it didn't implant. The second transfer was a total shit show.
What happened?
So everything was fine right up to transfer, and my mum actually came with me because it was one of those days where we thought transfer was going to be on the Sunday and ended up being on the Saturday, and my husband had flown up to Edinburgh to see some friends on the Friday. And then I called him on Friday when he was at the airport saying, it's tomorrow.
Oh boy.
And
cancel your trip.
Well, I just said, look, you're there now. Like, just spend the night there and get a flight back in the morning, and I'll meet you at the clinic in the morning. So my mum was like, I'll come with you just in case he doesn't make it for any reason. You've got something. I was like, fine, no problem. So the 3 of us were there, and we went in, and my husband and I went in and had to the theatre, and embryologist's name comes up on the screen. This is your embryo. Yeah, it looks lovely. It's your name. Yes, blah, blah, blah. And then my consultant goes to do the transfer, and it's not like she hadn't done a transfer on me before. I have a retroverted uterus, but it's never been an issue. Okay,
what does that mean exactly?
So it's when your uterus is slightly tilted backwards. So sometimes it can be a bit tricky to get the catheter in. But most, you do practice, from every consultant does a practice round whenever they do a transfer, and there's never been an issue. Anyway, this time there was. Oh, no. And suddenly she just went, what happened? Oh, I was lying there, and then she just said, when something's just taking a bit too long. I was like, this wasn't how it was last time. And then she went back out to the back where the embryologists are, and I was sort of sitting there, legs akimbo on the table, like looking at John, just going, what? Like, what's going on? And then it was like literally 10 minutes and I was sitting there, lying there rather. And I said to the nurse, like, do you mind like taking that out of my vagina? Because like, I'm kind of uncomfortable and I don't know what's going on. Like, anyway, she's like, oh yeah, sorry, okay. And then the consultant comes back in and I was like, is there a problem? Like, she said, this has just never happened to me before. And I was like, what? So basically, she thinks she transferred the embryo, but because of the catheter, like she hadn't put it in the optimum place that she would like to put it in. And they checked the catheter and it wasn't in the catheter. So she was like, the only place it can be is in your uterus. I was like, but you don't know for sure.
Well, couldn't they tell?
Like, well, this was my point. And I was like, well, I said, I don't really understand what's happening here. And she said, look, it's fine. It's definitely in there. You know, it's just a slight hiccup. I apologize. She didn't even apologize, actually. She just went, I don't know what happened. I was like, oh, but it's in there. She was like, yes. I said, you don't sound very sure. Yeah. And she said, well, it can't be anywhere else, was the way that she put it.
Oh my God. I feel like I'm going to burst into tears. That's traumatic.
And at the time we were just like in a bit of shock and just went, well, okay, as long as it's in there, you know, it's in there, but that's pretty shit. And so we walked out and the clinic we're kind of paired with, which is where all the kind of sort of procedures and stuff took place, were amazing. And they phoned me that afternoon and checked in and said, let me know what happened. Like, are you okay? My consultant didn't call me at all. Like, and then it was obviously the weekend, so she wasn't in clinic. And I was emailing her saying, we need to come and see you on Monday and discuss what's happened, because, and obviously I was super emotional and my husband was like fuming. And we'd got on really well with our nurse who looked after us there. And we arranged this meeting with our consultant, and I said to this nurse, I just said, would you mind sitting in on the meeting? I said, I don't want to put you in an awkward position, but equally I know it's going to be like she said, I said, and I need some witness to what she's saying.
Good for you.
And she said, yeah, I will. I don't usually, but I understand that you're really upset. And we had this meeting with her. She still didn't accept that she'd made a mistake. She was I never really gelled with her to begin with. I just didn't. But I was like, maybe that's just fertility doctors, you know, like I had no experience of what they were supposed to be like. So yeah, we had this really emotional, horrific conversation with her where she refused to accept responsibility for what she'd done. And I was just crying, and my husband was just like, but don't you understand what's happened here? Like, you're not even offering us anything. You know, they didn't even offer us any like compensation or say that like your next transfer would be free or like, you know, we really apologize and what can we do? And I just turned around and was like, you're never coming anywhere near me again. I was like, I've lost total trust in you, total faith. I think your attitude's appalling. So thanks, but no thanks. And we just walked out. But
so sorry.
The good thing, looking back at it now, it's just like, God, you know, but in a good way, I guess it took us somewhere else. So the nurse that worked there actually worked at a different clinic in London before, which is a really renowned clinic, which has a bit of waiting list. And she was like, if you're going to go there, I'll message them and I'll try and see if I can get you an earlier appointment.
Good. Yeah.
So sweet. Thank you so much. So then we switched clinics and we went to a clinic in the centre of London in Harley Street.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt, but just so for that transfer where you didn't really know where the embryo, did you ever have a follow-up, or it didn't take, obviously, right?
It didn't take.
And, but did you have to go in for testing, or did you just assume that it was not going to be anything?
We had a blood test.
You did? Okay.
But I'd already started bleeding before the blood test. So, I have to say up front, we've never had a positive pregnancy through any of our IVF rounds.
Okay.
We've never had implantation. So we moved clinics and we went to this quite intense clinic in London called ARGC. It's quite renowned. And the consultant who runs it, Mr. Tiranasi, is kind of like nicknamed the baby doctor. Like And it's kind of like where all the problem people go.
Okay.
It's like if you're a bit old and you've had numerous failed rounds elsewhere, everyone goes here because it's quite expensive. So it's a kind of like you would try somewhere else before going there first, really.
Uh-huh.
So we embarked on that, which was a totally different experience because they are totally amazing, this clinic, but it is like boot camp. Like you have a blood test every day at 7:30 in the morning. Sometimes you have 2 blood tests in a day. Sometimes you have 2 scans in a day. They change your drugs every day, depending on your blood test results. It's like a conveyor belt. Like it is literally. So if you're one of those people that's a kind of, needs a Zen space and needs someone to hold your hand, this is not the clinic for you. This is like, you just about have a squeaky chair and a water cooler. Like it's no frills. Like there's no bean bags and hot chocolate or any of that crap. It's like, sometimes you don't even get a seat. You have to stand in the hallway and wait for your blood test. So it's
God. They're like, we're making babies, damn it.
We're making babies and we're making a lot of money. So move on. Let's get him, let's get him in. But they were amazing.
But did that feel good because you felt like they knew what they were doing at least?
I felt like there was more control. Like it was like, I couldn't be more closely monitored if I tried. Like, they ran every test under the sun. I'd had a hysteroscopy before then, but I've literally had every single test related to IVF that is going, I think, pretty much that's relevant to me anyway. So we then did 4 rounds at ARGC, but after our first round failed, we got pregnant naturally.
Oh.
Yeah. Total shock.
Okay.
We were literally waiting for my period to start the next round of IVF.
Uh-huh.
And my period was late. This is really unusual for me. Like I'm never late. I'm literally like on the dot to the day.
Uh-huh.
And I did a test and it was positive. And then I went to them and I had a blood test and it was positive. And I was like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went for the blood test, my HCG level was like through the roof. It was like, you're either having twins or you're having a ectopic pregnancy. So I was like, okay. And then the next kind of 3 weeks, 4 weeks were basically in and out of, it's what we call it here, an early pregnancy unit at the local hospital.
Okay.
And it was like in and out of there having scans. They couldn't find it. So then it was a pregnancy of unknown location. It wasn't ectopic.
Whoa. Where was it? Did you ever figure it out?
Well, they did eventually find it, but it was really small. And then they said, it's likely not to be viable, but let's just wait and come back in a couple of weeks because you just never know. So let's just let it do its thing. And then it wasn't. And I miscarried at 8.5 weeks.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Keeley.
Yeah. So it was just bizarre. Like the whole thing was bizarre because I think we just weren't expecting it either. And we were like, how did that even happen?
Right. So it was between your third and fourth
round. Okay. Yeah.
Did you have any moment of like you got to kind of celebrate and be happy about it, or was it just like nerve-wracking the whole time?
Like the day off, like the day we found out, we kind of told our parents and our family and a few of our friends, and we were like, this is just totally bizarre, but we're pregnant, and everyone got a bit excited, and we were like, well, we just don't know. So, and then I think pretty much straight away when it started to be like, there was nothing quite right about it. So no one kind of got too excited. It was, it was like, this probably isn't going to end well. So that was kind of tough. But I think because it was also so unexpected, it was, it's not like we didn't grieve that we'd had a miscarriage, but it was almost like, I think because it was fairly early, I know no one's lucky in that situation, but, I didn't have to have any medical intervention. It all happened pretty naturally and it wasn't horrific. And I mean, it was horrific as those things are, but, it wasn't physically too bad. And I think we almost just thought of it as just like another failed round of IVF. You know, it was kind of like, all right, let's get back on the train. We just got to move on, basically.
Right. It's like the roller coaster of this whole infertility stuff.
Yeah.
So many ups and downs.
Yeah, totally.
How were you doing emotionally, and how were things with you and your husband?
Yeah, I mean, really, like, my husband's a total legend. I know everyone says that about their husbands, but
That's awesome.
well, I often use a hashtag when I talk about him on Instagram. It's like,
Right.
Dwighty is a legend. So it's really confusing, but I call my husband by our last name.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, I thought when you said John, I was like, oh, I thought his name was
Who is
Dwight.
that?
And then I was like, oh, that's your last name. Okay, got
And
it.
then everyone thinks it's his first name. I was like, he's not called Dwight. Anyway, so Dwighty. Yeah. He's just like, yeah, he's just great. And he's kind of the warrior in the relationship, to be honest. But through all of this, he's just been like, it's our standard kind of catchphrase. He's like, if I'm not worried, you definitely don't need to be worried.
Aww.
It's kind of like a funny, like, if I have a little wobble about something, he's like, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's like, you know, and he'll go off and do a little bit of research and come back and go, no, it's fine. Don't, like, he's just very calm and very level-headed. And
that's awesome.
Which is really, really lovely. And I think we're just really lucky that we just, you know, we're talkers. You know, we just, as we've probably gathered by now, because I haven't stopped talking.
I love it. That's what we do on these podcasts.
Yeah. And we just talk about what's happening and what's on our minds. And I think it's one of those things when you're doing this sort of, or on this sort of experience, is like, and I know not everyone finds it very easy, but it really, I think, makes you find out a lot about your relationship. And even though I knew all of these things before I married him, I was like, you know, I knew he was a great guy, and I knew, but it kind of just reinforced everything I already knew, you know, like it was like, you're so kind-hearted and generous, and like, how do I, you know, you're just always there. Like it was just, yeah, it was. That's so sweet. So I
love to hear that.
I think, again, it's not like I'm trying to make out like I'm a cold-hearted bitch, because I'm so not, but like, I'm hopefully one of the most loving, friendly people you'll ever meet. But I think at that point, when you're just set up for disappointment, you end up just being a bit programmed. And I know that that's a really pessimistic way to think about things, but
no, I think that makes a lot of sense.
And I think it's all that self-preservation, right? You kind of, you set yourself up so that you think it's going to be bad news, so that if it isn't, that's a bonus. But actually what you're preparing for is the worst the whole time. Yes. So, and I think it was just a bit of that. And it was like a bit of self-preservation. And we're quite good at kind of cheering ourselves up. You know, like we love to go out and have a good time. Right. And, you know, basically every failed round ended up with us in a pub, getting drunk. Which I know no one, like, it's so funny, isn't it? Like, people think everyone who does IVF is like holier than thou, and that they don't do anything.
I wasn't.
No, I was like, I got drunk for like about a month after every failed round.
Amen.
Like, just, you know, show me the wine. Let's go and have a good time. Forget about it. I'm doing all the things that I shouldn't do. Don't care.
Well, you have to get that release, you know.
Totally. And I think because we're kind of, you know, that's what we like doing. That's our social life. We like going and, you know, having a drink in the pub or going to a nice restaurant, so we're good at like doing things and picking ourselves back up and just staying and being grateful, I guess, without being too cheesy about all the stuff we have got. Like, we're really lucky. We have a nice life, and let's just enjoy what it is then, rather than dwell on kind of the shit stuff.
Right.
And then you sort of go, okay, I've got that out of my system now. Like,
back at it.
Right. Yeah. When's the next one?
Exactly. It's not like you're like Nicolas Cage and leaving Las Vegas and like going to
no, exactly.
have a few beers or a glass of wine and get back at it. That's normal.
Exactly. So then we just sort of, and then we just cracked on. And we had, you know, good low but good collections, good fertilization. And they just weren't implanting. And it got to our fourth round. And the consultant kind of said, like, she said that we just, you know, we can't explain really what's going on, but really what it must come down to now is your egg quality. There's no other explanation as to why you're not getting pregnant, because everything else is normal. you know. And I'd had like this clinic also do all of that immunotherapy. So I'd had intralipids, I'd had IVIGs, I'd had, you know, all sorts of stuff, steroids, you know, whatever they'd had, they'd flung at me, and none of it had worked. And I know there's a lot of debate and research over whether all of those add-ons at clinics are relevant or even have any scientific backup. But when you're in it and they say, well, this might help, you go, yeah, okay, I'll pay £2,000 for a drip for 3 hours. Sounds great. You know, like it's just, you just do it, don't you? Because you're like, well, it might make the difference.
Right, exactly.
So, but by our 4th round, our consultant was like, yeah, we do think it's egg quality now, because there's no other explanation. You know, you've done 4 rounds with us, you've done 6 rounds overall. So we kind of took a step back and we were like, what else can we do? You know, and she said, we'll keep going for as long as you want to keep going. She's like, it's just whether emotionally and financially you can do it. Right. So we're sort of in your hands. So, and they had said, look, egg donation is probably going to be your best chance.
Okay.
And when we started, my chances, I think, were like less than 10%. And I think by the end, like 2%. And I always have this ridiculous conversation with people. It's like, if in any other part of your life, if someone turned around to you and went, okay, there's a 98% chance this isn't going to work, you'd go, you know, excuse my French, I can't think of a way to say it without swearing.
Swear. You can swear.
You'd be like, fuck that, I'm not doing that. Like,
yeah,
no way. Like, that's ridiculous. But if someone says to you, but there's a 2% chance it will, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do it.
I know.
Of course.
Isn't that funny? Yeah.
It's weird how your brain gets wired to like cling on to the.
Well, there's even the 1 iota that it's going to work if you want it so badly, you cling to that for sure.
Totally. And I always used to say, it doesn't matter whether it's 2% or 5%. I was like, it's a chance. And it's the way that I always used to kind of frame it in my head. It was like less about statistics. It was just like, but it's a bit like the lottery. Yeah, it might be you.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it might be. You never know.
The saying in New York is, the New York lottery is like, the catchphrase is, you never know.
Well, okay. Yeah, exactly.
You never know.
You never know. I like that. So, yeah. So we decided actually to, like, our clinic were amazing and they are one of the best in London. But as ever, we were like, okay, well, if that's your opinion, let's just go and get some other opinions. And we went to a couple of other clinics and had some consultations, and we were just, one of them I didn't really like. I was like, oh, this is pokey and I don't, you know, whatever. And so then AIGC had recommended was potentially if it was egg donation, they don't actually do it at that clinic. So they were like, you know, we might suggest you go to Spain or to another clinic in London who we would work with. And I was like, okay. And then I said, what about like any other testing that we can do? You know, like PGS testing and they said, yeah, we could do that if you want to do that. And it was, for us, it was kind of like another tick box in terms of what else can we do, like really giving it like our biggest shot with my eggs in terms of exhausting every option, basically. And they said, yeah, we do that test. And then when we looked into it, we were like, they're just going to send it to Spain anyway, so why don't we just go to Spain and just cut out the middleman. So we were also a bit like, John / Dwighty is also a bit of a
the legend
is a bit of a believer in, you know, as most people would be, you know, you put different inputs in to get different results, and if you keep putting the same things in, you're going to get the same results. So we were like, okay, well, let's change the environment, you know, find a different clinic. And so we decided to go to a clinic in Valencia in Spain, which was very nice. And we had 2 rounds of treatment there where we PGS tested our embryos. Okay.
So how does that work logistically? Do you move there for like a short period of time? Are you going back and forth, or like?
I was quite, because I haven't been working, because I've been on Project IVF for the last couple of years, which again, I've been very fortunate to do, which I don't know how I did all those rounds when I was working, because I worked in advertising and it's fucking crazy.
Right. And the hours are insane.
The hours are insane.
If you're shooting commercials and stuff and TV, like that's like,
I'm running around trying to find meeting rooms to do injections in and, like failing on client meetings because I've got to go back to the clinic and all that jazz. Yep. So I was really lucky. So actually we just said, we rented an Airbnb and I was there for like 10, well, actually one visit I was there for like over 2 weeks, but like my mum came out with me. We had like 5 days with her and then Dwighty flew out and then it was like a mini holiday. Mm-hmm. It was really nice. It was just like, and I speak a bit of Spanish, so I was kind of enjoying like mingling with the locals.
Right.
And it was just a different experience and it was just nice being in a different place. It gave it a different focus. Didn't change the result, unfortunately, but we had a lovely time doing it.
So 2 rounds there.
2 rounds there. Okay. And we only had 1 embryo each time to test, and they both came back abnormal. Oh my gosh. And we said we would do 3 rounds, and I said after the second round, I was like, I know it's going to come back abnormal again. I just know it is. Yeah. And I said, and that kind of cemented with me as well that the issue is my eggs, and they're not getting any better, and therefore the embryos are going to come back abnormal. And then in hindsight, that was also like kind of explained the miscarriage. It explained why we've never had any sort of result from IVF in terms of implantation. So things were like clicking, like every little step we went across, things were just like clicking in terms of, well, that makes sense to me anyway. Or,
totally. But sometimes you just have to be ready in your gut to move on to the next step, right? Like it was like, you might have known that even earlier, but you weren't ready to move on yet.
Yeah, exactly. So
can I ask you just to put in perspective? So how long had it been up until this point since you guys started trying? It must have been like over a year.
So we've been trying for 6 years.
6 years. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like 1 year. Okay. 6 years. Okay. 6 years. And then
so we kind of had like I mean, obviously some of that was just not through IVF. That was just trying naturally. But 4.5 years of IVF.
Of full on IVF. Okay. So, and how old were you at this point after you decided to not do the third?
PGS. So that was the beginning of this year. Okay. God, this year seems to be really long.
So 2019.
So 2019. So March of this year was our last round of IVF.
Okay. So then what happened?
So then
the next chapter.
The next chapter is we just realized and decided that, it's one of those things where you kind of take stock in what do we really want? And actually what we really want is to have a family. And does that really matter how that happens? Not really. And so we decided that we would go to egg donation.
That's so awesome that it's even an option, right?
I mean, it's totally incredible. Like, it's insane that there are even these options. Like the IVF is even an option. I mean, it still blows my mind, the fact that this all happens, even though people say, it should be moved on by now. And I'm like, hang on, like it's only been around for 40 years,
exactly.
Give it a break. But yeah, it's totally incredible that, and now, and even more recently, particularly in terms of egg donation, that the options within that have become so varied and so brilliant for different people in different situations. And so we decided to move on, and we talked about it a lot, and we went to see a counsellor because I felt like it was a thing that I should tick off the list again. Not that I felt like I've never had any therapy in any of this time. I've never really felt like I've needed it. I think because, as I said, I talk about this shit all the time. And I find that's like my therapy. Like that's kind of the way that I deal with it. Anyway, we went to see this fertility counsellor because I was like, well, maybe donation's different. And it is, obviously, because there are different dynamics that you have to consider and, the grief of your own genetics and all of that stuff.
Yep.
Which is hard. And, I'm not going to lie, especially when, my family has really strong genes. Like even my niece and nephew, my brother's kids, basically could be my kids. Like, it's ridiculous. And I put up pictures of my mum and I, and everyone's like, oh my God, you two are so similar. Like, and then I think, I'm never going to have that. Like, I'm never, and that's hard.
Yeah. I'm glad that you say that, because I think that is one of the realities of it, that people might feel weird admitting.
Yeah.
like nothing to be ashamed of that at all.
On the flip side, which is also, and not just because you're trying to rationalize it to yourself, but you also just go, but even if I had my own biological kids, I wouldn't even know if they were going to look like me anyway.
Yes.
Like some just don't,
right.
like it's
totally, it's a total crapshoot.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, and that is the like bizarre amazingness of genetics. It's like you mix it all up and you don't know what you're going to get. It's kind of, so we went to this counsellor, and anyway, it didn't do anything for me. I mean, she was nice, but I felt like I almost knew more about it than she did.
Okay.
And that's probably because I live in this little, Instagram bubble of fertility that kind of, it's kind of one of those things where it's almost like I think I know too much about all this stuff. Just like, I'm sure you feel the same. It's kind of like, sometimes you wish you didn't know as much as you do, but equally it's really
on the flip
empowering.
On the flip side, I do feel like I'm like learning so much every single time I do an interview with somebody, because I'm always like, what's that? I've never heard of that. Like,
yeah. And also because everyone's different, right? Everyone has really specific.
Completely.
Whether it's, like I don't have endometriosis, but someone else does. And that changes the whole landscape of what they're dealing with and what they're doing,
Yes.
So anyway, we went to this counsellor, and the only thing that I took away from it, which I've said to a lot of people since who have asked me kind of who were also now going through this process and have asked how I chose my donor or I did whatever. She just said, when you're looking for your donor, it's never going to be 100% right. It just has to be right enough. And it really stuck with me, because I was like, you're looking for you, but that doesn't exist, because you, it's never going to be 100% the same as you.
I love that.
But if there's always going to be something that just feels right enough that you feel totally comfortable with it and that you feel like that's the right decision.
Yes. Wow.
And so that was worth the, whatever it was, 170 quid we paid her. So I took that away and we never saw her again. And then we just started looking into but I think what helped was that it made us realize what we wanted in terms of it. We could have gone back to Valencia and had a donor transfer within 6 weeks of deciding. But it would have been totally anonymous, but the clinic would have chosen it for us. We would have never known anything about them apart from
wow.
She has brown hair and brown eyes, and she's 5'3.5" like me. Like, that's it. And we decided that wasn't for us, and that we did want to know more about our donor, and that was important for us. And as shallow as it sounds, it was really important for me to see photos of the donor. And and everyone has different views about that.
I don't think that's shallow at all. You want to know what your potential child is going to look like.
Yeah, but I think some people, and totally that's their prerogative in terms of what they think. But it's quite a weird thing to admit to yourself. Like, it's, no one wants to think that, they're worried about looks, or that they're, because everyone's like, no, it doesn't matter about that. I'm like, I mean, I'm all right. Like, I'm not a total minger. So I think I just want to...
A minger. I love that term.
I don't know whether I should be saying all of this, but like, I was like, I want to know. Like, I want to know what she looks like. And, and I think it was really important for Dwighty as well. Cause
I think that's just part of the process, I think that's a realistic part of the process.
Yeah.
It's not like you're like, my daughter or my son needs to be gorgeous, but you want to know what they're going to look like. It's a huge deal.
And I think what helped me was that right enough phrase was about finding something familiar with that person.
Sure.
That made me feel more comfortable, rather than just reading a load of stats and statistics about somebody or answers on a questionnaire. It was like, you literally can look into their eyes and kind of go, yeah, I get you. Like, I think you look lovely, or like, I think you look like a nice person, or whatever.
Absolutely.
So because we decided that we wanted to know more, that level of information, it kind of drove us down two sort of automatic paths in terms of where we could go to get treatment. One of them was your lovely country, obviously, and the other one was Russia.
Okay.
I mean, you couldn't have two more opposite places.
We won't open the political
Let's not open the political, no.
Of the US and Russia, so yes, go on.
But And we had a consultation with a clinic in the States on Skype. But then a friend of mine, a really old friend of mine actually, had been having a similar process. She'd actually frozen her eggs in her mid-30s and hadn't got together with another friend of mine until later on, and tried with her own eggs and it didn't work. And she'd looked at egg donation. She's from Sweden, so she'd been recommended to go to Russia for that reason, because of heritage and looks, and the proportion of kind of that type of look was going to be higher there. And she found this clinic and she raved about it, and her little girl is now 5 months old. So we'd had some good feedback from there, and then we looked at the price, and it was like a third of the cost of going to the States.
Oh wow.
So we were like, okay,
Russia it is.
Russia it is. Well, we kind of like, well, let's look at it. Let's go through the database. And if we can't find anyone, then we'll go to the States and we'll try and make it happen in whatever way we can. But the clinic in Russia were just amazing. Like the best communication I've had, and I've been at like 4 different clinics now.
Wow. That's so great to hear.
It was so nice and so refreshing. And they were so lovely. I mean, they're the only place where I've had direct email with my consultant, and they would reply in emojis. I mean, I've never had that before ever. Like, I would go, hope that's okay, and they'd reply with like a thumbs up and a smiley face.
Oh,
I'd be like,
cute.
Okay, sure.
For millennials.
I was like, oh, okay, that's a bit weird, but okay, that's great. So we decided to go there. So we chose our donor in June, end of June, beginning of July. And we had our transfer in October.
Okay. So one question about the donor. So you didn't get to meet the donor, right? You just saw pictures?
No. So she's still totally anonymous.
Okay.
That will be the case in theory, in inverted speech marks, forever.
Okay. There's no chance that you'll ever get to meet her or find anything more about it. Wow.
No. But the amount of information is like pretty mind-blowing. They go through, and actually this clinic in Russia, all of their donors are already mothers. So you get information on their kids, like how old they are, what color eyes they have, what color hair they have, like their family history, like their parents, their grandparents, like literally how tall they were, what they, I mean, it's really super detailed.
So cool.
It is really cool. And for us, that was where we wanted to go. And there's lots of debate in terms of, egg donation over anonymity and non-anonymity and, the gray areas in between and what's right and what's wrong. I think whatever right is what's right for you. Like that, we're always going to be totally open with our child about how they came to be. And
yes.
So, and then, God, in 18 years' time, everybody will know who everybody is. So it's like, it's,
exactly. You'll be able to scan someone's wrist with your whatever piece of technology and be like, you get the whole history.
Exactly.
It'll probably be way cooler than that, but
yeah.
That was a lame example.
Yeah, it won't be a blood test or a finger prick through the post these days. It'll just be like something else. But
so you had the transfer, and how did that go?
So. Oh my God, it was hilarious. So it was amazing it was in St. Petersburg where we had our treatment, and it is the most beautiful city. I have to say, I was really, not that I had some preconceptions before we went. I knew it was beautiful in parts, but it was just so fascinating, which was also just another bonus of like, we get to come to another city. Right. It's like the international wonders of IVF.
It's so crazy cool.
Yeah. And so all the treatment went really well, and we went to have transfer, and we were in the theatre, and we were like, oh, it's exciting. And the embryologist brought the catheter in, and it was almost like the door triggered like a playlist, and suddenly in this theatre came the dulcet tones of "We are the world, we are the children." It was the most bizarre thing, and I just started wetting myself with laughter. Like I couldn't contain myself. I was like, is this for real? This cannot be happening. They're not playing Michael Jackson as we're having our transfer. This is wrong on so many levels. And John was then laughing, and then I could see the consultant at like the embryonic, the consultant who was doing it, and I was just like, she started smiling, the nurse started teaching, and I was just like,
oh my God,
this is the funniest thing I've ever. And she was like, you need to stop laughing because I'm gonna try and put the catheter in, and obviously my cervix is contracting because I'm like giggling. I'm trying not to wet myself because obviously I've got like a full bladder.
Right.
Anyway, so that carries on in the background whilst I'm having this transfer.
Oh my gosh. It's
it
so
just
appropriate though, because
so
you had been
surreal.
all over the world, right?
Well, this is true. But I was just like, do some people find this like comforting? Or like, is this, I mean, maybe it's just me, I'm a bit of a cynic, but I was like, this is weird, this is odd.
No,
but actually
totally
it was very funny, and I'm actually going to email them because I was like, I feel like you need to like vary up your playlist a little bit. Like if you're going to play music, let's think of some other options.
Maybe some classical or like something.
Yeah, like maybe just something not so specific. I mean, you know, I thought like, you know, even Whitney would be better than that. You know, it's like, yeah. So anyway, so that was quite memorable in a way. So it all went perfectly fine. And then they were like, okay, well, have a safe flight home. We were like, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Is that it? And then you kind of forget what a transfer is.
Right.
So we flew home with a lot of legal Russian drugs in our luggage.
Okay.
And and then 8 days, 9 days, whatever it was later, we took a test and we found out we're pregnant.
Oh my God.
Which is totally insane.
Well, yes. Tell me about the test. Did you have to go into a clinic or did you do an at-home test? You didn't have to go back to Russia, did you?
No. Okay. So we did have to have a HCG blood test. But I'd been through that process before. Like you have to go up to Harley Street. It's like you pay for it, private clinic, and it's like just a lab that you go in, walk into. But it takes like 3 or 4 hours to do it. And I've been in that situation so many times before, and it's just been total torture. Like I found out one of our rounds didn't work in like New Balance on Oxford Street in London, you know, like trying to buy a pair of trainers, you know, it's just like, I don't want to go through that again. So we decided to do a home test.
And you're like, I can never go in that store again now.
Can never go in New Balance again. Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
So we took a test. I think I like woke up about 6:30 in the morning and I like prodded Dwight in, like, I need the toilet. He was like, oh shit, okay, right, okay, like, oh, you're gonna do it now? I was like, well, I need the toilet. He was like, okay, yeah. And I like, before I had literally, you know, pissed on the stick, opened the bathroom door and come out, like the result had already come up, and I was like, and I wasn't expecting it to. I was expecting me to get back into bed with John and like, you know, look at it and wait for it to come up. So then I like threw my hands to my mouth, just like, and it was still dark in the bedroom. He was like, I can't see your face. What are you doing? Like, I was like, oh shit, sorry. And then like, I don't know why I just didn't turn the main light on. You know, I'm getting my phone and like getting the torch out to look at the test. It was just like total like fast. Anyway, and like then we were just like, you know, crying and
oh God,
so happy, and we were just like, oh my God, this is just like totally bizarre. It's kind of, I think it was one of those things as well where, because it was egg donation, it was more likely to work than not work. But you still because you've been through all of this shit, you still like, but it still might not work. And like, it's hard also then to temper, you know, other people's expectations of what the result might be and all of that. So it was just, and also just weird, like, I just, you know, I've never been pregnant, like properly. I mean, I know, but the thought of that was more weird to me than any of the IVF stuff and any of the everything else. It was like, just the thought that I might actually be pregnant was just totally bizarre and surreal.
Exactly. So you, this is fairly recent news, right? How far along are you now?
This is really recent news. So I'm 10 weeks.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So happy for you.
Yeah. So we had a 7-week scan and heard the heartbeat.
Oh, God.
It was just
what did that feel like?
Oh, my God. It was just so bizarre. Just like, and I think until that point, even though we'd had the positive test, I was still quite reserved about it and kind of, I was like, but I said to myself, as soon as we have that scan, there's really no reason why anything should go wrong. So, just get on with it. Just enjoy it. Like I know so many people who've really, really struggled with that post fertility kind of pregnancy and just denied it their whole pregnancy and got to like 32 weeks and been like, oh my God, I'm having a baby. Like it's that. And I think, God, it's really sad. Like, and I promised myself that I'm not that sort of anxious warrior sort of person anyway, but I was just like, whatever's going to happen is going to happen now. So just go with it.
Enjoy it
and get on with it. So,
oh my God, I'm
so we have another scan next week, which is really exciting.
Okay. And you're feeling okay?
Yeah, I feel all right. I mean, I think I'm getting away with it. Like, as in, I feel nauseous and I feel tired, but that's totally fine.
Yeah.
And like some days the nausea's been pretty bad, but I haven't been sick. It definitely hasn't put me off my food. In fact, it's made it worse.
That's great.
Which is all great. But then I kind of think, well, actually, I bloody deserve it to be all right. Like, I don't want to be heinously ill or, in any sort of, I mean, that would be really crap if I went through all of this and then had a horrific pregnancy. But, I feel all right. I'm kind of looking forward to the next couple of weeks being over, just so that I know that I'll feel different again.
Yes.
And I'll regain a bit of energy. And
so the second trimester is soon, and it's like every milestone I feel like you might be able to kind of exhale a little bit more and kind of enjoy it a little bit more.
Yeah, I think so.
It's so great. Well, Keeley, I would love to end it, if you don't mind, just talking a little bit more about egg donation, because I know that there might be people listening who are maybe on the fence about going down that route, or tell me kind of how you came to that decision. And obviously it, there's a happy ending for you. So how do you feel about it now?
I mean, like I said, it isn't an easy decision, because you do have to be prepared to, to let go of that kind of genetic connection that you will have with your child. But I think what really comforted me was listening to other people's stories, a bit like on podcasts like yours. I found some amazing people on Instagram and who had been through the same thing and who were talking about it really openly. And again, it's it's a bit like just fertility and IVF in general. It's like trying to break the stigma of what that means. And some people have this thing of like, oh God, IVF's a dirty word, egg donation's like even worse. It's kind of, and it's just not. And it's just, and the more people that I came into contact with, the more common it was becoming, and the more the more people were suddenly like, oh no, I had egg donation. It's like, oh well, I didn't know that. Like, like, and I just think it really depends on what you feel comfortable with, and it might be that you don't want to know anything, and actually you want the clinic to take control, and that's the way that you want it to work. It might be a bit like us, that you want to know everything. I think you just have to find decide on which path you want to go down, and then it's almost a bit, it's not overwhelming in terms of starting IVF again, in terms of which clinic do I go to and which do I do this and which do I do that. But it does, you think you're like, okay, well I'm doing egg donation and I'll like wipe your hands of it and like sorted now, that's all done. But it comes with a whole other raft of different decisions and options that you have to make. But I think, like, definitely go and talk to somebody if you feel like you need to, and if you feel like that's something that's either stopping you or you're just not sure about it. Because I know for lots of people that I know, that really, 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 really helps. And whether that's because, your partner's not sure or your family aren't sure. I know a few people that have been in contact with me over Instagram who have really struggled with family not accepting that that's what they want to do, which is such a shame. And it's like, really, it's got nothing to do with them. I'd tell them to sod off. But, like, totally. But, you want their support, and and it's like getting someone to kind of talk to you about how to navigate those conversations and stuff is really, really helpful. And I think helps you come to those decisions as well, you know, and actually
Yes.
it's all about that sort of educating people, isn't it? It's like, without kind of sounding patronizing to them, it's about giving them perspective and giving them context about why you're doing it, and all of those things.
Right. I mean, if you hadn't gone down that road, you wouldn't be 10 weeks pregnant right now, right? So
totally. I mean, I would probably, you know, I probably would never have kids. I mean, that's the reality. And I think it is a really good mindset to just kind of you know, and again, this doesn't necessarily apply, but I still get to carry my baby. I still get to give birth to my baby. Equally, there are lots of people who I know who use surrogacy and say exactly the same thing. They're like, it doesn't matter to me. Like, I think it's just the way that you position it in your mind is, what is it that I really want? And if it's because I want to be a mom, if I want to be a mom, and
I like mom better.
If you want to be a mom and you want to have a family, then what do you do? Yeah. And, you know, and I think, and it kind of becomes and it's not as simple as that, but it kind of does become as simple as that, I think, because there are these options, like we said at the beginning, like how lucky are we that we live in a time where this is even possible, you know, not even for heterosexual couples, for gay couples, for whoever, you know, like it's incredible that this can happen. So awesome. So kind of, you're just like, well, then I'm going to take advantage of that, you know, like it's, why should I sort of suffer because when I don't need to necessarily? Yeah, it brings up the whole debate of, you know, what is being a parent? What is being a mom? You know, is it someone that carried the baby or that has the genetic? Yeah, and I considered myself a mum a long time ago, and not because I did or didn't have kids, but because my friends have kids and I have nieces and nephews. Exactly. And all my, you know, and I act the same way that with them that I would do with my own children. I hope that, you know, you're all looking after each other in certain ways, and that just becomes a slightly different dynamic. Absolutely. It's kind of, so I think it's just like, make sure you talk about it, make sure you find someone to talk to, and figure out in your head what you think that looks like. And there are so many options out there. So many. Thank God for your donor. And thank God for my donor, you know, and just for science in general. And my whole theory, and this is kind of the theme of the podcast too, is just love is love, right? It's totally just love is love. Love is love. Hey again, guys. Thank you so much for listening to my conversation with Keeley. I want to thank her again for all of her honesty and openness, and for kicking off season 2. I cannot wait to share so many great stories with you guys this season. I have a bunch already lined up and already recorded, so there's so much good, diverse stuff. My goal this season is just diversity. All sorts of people, all sorts of stories. If you have a story or know somebody who wants to talk to me, please email me at infertileafstories@gmail.com, or you can always follow me and slide into my DMs on Instagram at infertileafstories. I also have a really fun announcement coming soon about a big event that I'm planning with somebody else in this amazing community, so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, thank you guys. I love you all. Happy 2020 and happy season 2.